This is Scott Richmond.
And Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. Arnie, good morning to you. How's it going?
Scott, how have you been? We haven't been seeing much of each other lately, so I'm glad to be in the studio with you this morning and chatting with you.
I'm seeing you today. It's beautiful.
It's a beautiful day today. You know, I'm feeling lately we're living in an alternative universe. Maybe it's because I haven't been seeing enough of you. But I just this morning as I was writing in, I was listening to some talk about our president of the United States who claims now that everybody that's speaking under oath is lying, and all the people that refuse to speak are telling the truth.
Okay.
And when we grew up in New York, it was exactly the opposite, right? If someone refused to testify, there was a reason for that, right?
100%.
And people that were testifying under oath, usually you believe, because if they lied, they got caught and went to prison. So it's a weird time we're in. Plus, locally, just recently, there was a headline in the newspaper saying that Missoula is the Austin of the Northwest. That's almost like a parallel universe. I mean, we used to be compared with, some other places, but now the Austin of the Northwest. And I think that's primarily due to the work of our guest today, Nick Checota. And what he's built here already and what he's contemplating, moving forward on in 2020, his new project, which is called The Drift, which is an event center and condos and a hotel and parking and another piece to this comprehensive puzzle of venues and entertainment locations and the ability to attract 50,000 people into Missoula for events and activities outside of, the football games and the other sporting events. It's good to chat with him today. We haven't talked to him for 2 years.
He was in here that long?
Yeah, he was in here right before they opened the Kettle House Amphitheater.
Oh, that's right.
So we can catch up with him on that. We can catch up with him on his plans. Most of the comments about what is contemplated are good, but there are some longtime Missoulians who have some trepidation about all of this development, all of the money that's being spent on it, considering other needs in the community, including affordable housing, because there's some tax increment financing that will go along with this project. And if it's spent on this, it's not spent on other things that other people in the community have priority for. And I think it's a good topic to discuss with Nick about how all of this helps and benefits the community and where he sees it going in the long run.
What I like about speaking with Nick is that he's very direct. He doesn't pull punches. He tells you what he's thinking and is not always worried about how it plays, because I feel like he has an intent and he wants to communicate that intent. That's a good thing. Sometimes it's not always the most popular thing, but he's kind of fearless in that space, and I admire that.
I admire that too. But I've lived in towns where if you're all in with one person and something happens, there's an economic downturn, or that person has a personal economic downturn,
right?
Then your beautiful, shining Emerald City on the hill has a lot of broken windows,
and you got to be mindful of that.
Yes. Right now, everything's going great in Missoula. We have the lowest unemployment rate. We have the highest job growth of any city in the state.
Sure.
We're booming. We're pumping. Everything's going great. We're building. We had $1 billion worth of infrastructure built here in the last 4 or 5 years. So you couldn't make a better story in the broader sense of things. We still suffer from the same issues that every city suffers from. What do you do with homeless people? What do you do about a booming economy, which leaves some people out, and then they can't afford to participate in that booming economy?
Yeah, no.
So, I mean, and he has a significant role in the boom, and I think we want to talk to him about the boom, but also the boom in the context of the implications of that for the rest of the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also know from an operational standpoint, he runs a very tight ship.
Yes.
Very dialed in, has recruited really good talent from the university and has been building the talent pool over the last couple of years, so that's great. Also, he's involved in the library as well, right? So the new public library
he just
that's
made
opening
a
up.
$50,000 family contribution from him and his wife to put a children's theater in the second floor of the new library, which is very generous of him.
Which is incredibly generous, and he's part of that whole big Front Street, Front Higgins kind of development. So I think it'll be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it as well.
Okay, when we come back, we will have our guest, Nick Checota from Logjam, back after this. All right, we are back. Arnie, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Who is known in show business as Mr. Warmth?
Mr. Warmth was Don Rickles, right?
Exactly. Okay.
Yes.
Who was known as the hardest working man in show business?
James Brown.
Let me challenge that. Who is really in Missoula? Who's the hardest working man?
Nick Checota. There's no doubt about that.
And that's who's here. You
Nick.
like that, Nick?
I like that.
Corny intro, but it works.
So, Nick.
Anytime you can relate me to
James Brown?
James Brown, I'm good.
Well, two dead people? I mean, that's not really the best reference point for you, but
he really is, though, right?
No, not just the hardest working man. Recently, there was an article, we've mentioned this before, that referred to Montana as the Austin, Texas of the Rocky Mountains. And if that's true, and it was done in a positive way, because this has become a music mecca, there's really only one person responsible for that, and that's Nick. I mean, he really has made this into a destination venue and a wonderful venue for the people that live here.
100%.
Oh, thanks.
And so tell our audience a little bit about what this network of facilities you have and services that you've offered to allow us to catapult ourselves into that kind of high esteem.
Well, it all started kind of with the Top Hat, where we bought that in 2013 and kind of dipped our toe in the water in a small club environment, a 500 cap room, along with a capacity room, along with a restaurant, and we had success and we really enjoyed it. So no master plan was in place yet, and we had the opportunity to take the Wilma, and we bought that and did a full remodel, put a new sound system, repositioned that. And then we started to see, all right, well, we got this entertainment thing going, and we really enjoy doing this, and we're having good success with it. So that led to the opportunity that came along with Kettle House Amphitheater, 4,500 capacity room. And that's also coinciding with that was the launch of Logjam Presents, a production and promotion company. And from there, we had great success with Kettle House. It's been a very profitable room for us and received well by concert goers, and so from there we took over Ogren Park, which has its challenges for sure. As a room.
The Mumford and Son concert.
Yeah, we had the Mumford and Son, which was a really successful concert for our concert goers and for the artists and for Logjam. But that field and the conditions of the field and the drainage on the field and all kinds of things posed some challenges.
We can get to that
at Ogren, and we can talk about
Summer
that.
of 2019.
Yep. And then we are in April are opening our first room we own in Bozeman, which is a 1,300 capacity room called the Elm, ELM, Elm. And we also recently in September took over the 500 capacity Rialto Theater. We don't own that. We manage that on behalf of the owner, but we're exclusive booker on that. And so that kind of brings us up to our current status as a promoter. We're going to do about 250,000 tickets this year.
How many shows?
Well, in totality, we're going to do about 210 shows this year. 210 ticketed shows. We do a lot of
venues.
Across all venues. We do a lot of free stuff at the Top Hat and jazz night and those kind of things. I don't put that in our totals. 210 ticketed events.
That's like one every day practically.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
And how big an organization do you have to manage all of this? Because you have venues and entertainment
and restaurant
and restaurant
and bars.
So
we're at about 210 people right now with almost 20 full-time salaried employees, and then the rest of the 210 are part-time hourly.
Right.
And a lot of them are working 40 hours. They just happen to be hourly. But yeah, this business is a lot about scale. And so you have this overhead, and the reason we're adding rooms and growing like we are is that group can scale fairly effectively.
Right, and you want to care and feed for the core staff, and you also want to be able to build on your reputation so that you can have a variety of acts that will appeal to a large audience.
Yeah, and I think that's working. I mean, the agent world is starting to really understand who we are, and we're buying enough shows where we've moved into that upper tier of buyers. We're not in the top tier, but we're definitely in that next group of buyers. So agents take us really seriously, more than they ever have. And then with the launch of our latest endeavor, which I'm sure we'll talk about, the Drift, that gives us a 6,000 capacity room. But more interestingly, it really changes our business a little bit. We're in the business of creating experiences for people, whether that's a food experience, whether that's a concert experience, which is our core business. But this lets us, what we really like is we have this core concert business, and then we have these ancillary businesses that complement and cross-promote with the core business. Restaurant and bar has been a huge piece of that. The hotel lodging component, we feel, fits into that portfolio really nicely, diversifies our revenue a little bit, but lets us create, again, this full core experience, this full experience around entertainment. So now you can come to Missoula, you can stay in the hotel that we develop at the Drift, you can see a show at the Drift, you can see a show at the Amp, you can see a show at the Wilma, but you can have this whole destination music experience. And if you live in Missoula, you can either enjoy all that, or you can do a staycation and go to the hotel and go see a show. I mean, there's lots of options there.
Was this part of your vision when you first came to Missoula, when you bought the Top Hat? Did you envision multiple venues with this integration?
Absolutely not. No.
Really? I mean, and so what made it, what really spurred it on?
I think once we got into the Wilma and we started to see, all right, the scale aspect of the entertainment business, the success we were having, and just my general competitive and drive, we just wanted to keep growing it. And at some point it crossed the line where we said, all right, we're going to become a full-fledged entertainment company. We're not just going to own a couple venues. We're going to broaden that and become more of a regional player in the promotion world.
Your competitive nature drives you, but what makes you want to build this incredible, statewide entity? Is it because do you want to sell it at some point? Do you want to bring investors in? Do you want to take it public? How are you looking at this?
To answer your question, do I want to sell it? I don't.
Because you love it too much.
I really enjoy what I do. I've got 3 kids that love music that may one day want to get into this business. So I don't want to do anything that jeopardizes that if they choose to.
So you're already doing succession planning.
Yeah, I mean the interim succession planning. I'm fortunately married to a really smart woman, and she worked at Arthur Andersen for years and is very capable. And if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, she steps in and runs the whole thing. But yeah, long term, it's an option. If they're not interested, then is selling on the table 10, 15 years down the road? It might be.
Sure.
But that's not we're not building this like some people build with an exit strategy of selling.
Right.
It's a strategy of building a really interesting, cool business that's increasingly profitable, and someday, one of my kids could work for it if they want to.
And the other thing is that in this industry, unlike some others, bigger is better. Because you can have more leverage on attracting acts and pricing them right for the marketplace, and then the word spreads, and it just has a cumulative effect.
More than ever. I mean, what's happening is you have this massive consolidation going on in the industry. I mean, it's a classic industry was very fragmented, very inefficient, and frankly pretty dysfunctional. And you're seeing an entity like Live Nation capitalize on that. They have infinite capital, not infinite, but they have, because they're a public company with a $10+ billion valuation, they have access to tremendous capital, and they're buying everybody in sight, and they're growing and scaling, and they're taking over regions. And if you want to be competitive with the worlds of the Live Nation, you have to be very strategic on how you operate within your market. And we are being really strategic on how we operate within Montana as a market. And how do we defend ourselves against from the inevitable day when Live Nation says, all right, I've grown all these big markets to the point of no more growth, and I'm a public company, I got to keep growing.
Yeah.
And it's now tertiary markets and international markets, and I'm going into Montana.
Well, what's interesting about that is these large companies like Live Nation and IMG and others have always had an appetite to try to scour for everything. And Scott knows this, but back in the early 90s, when I had an office in Moscow, Russia, we got hired by then William Morris Agency to do a feasibility study on them acquiring Gorky Park. The whole operation. There were theaters there. There was an amusement park. There was what was called the Green Theater, which was their outdoor staging area. Huh. And the first thing they did when Yeltsin took over and things opened up, they would look right into Moscow to see if they could acquire this huge property, which they weren't able to do. It was too expensive. But they were always had the appetite to look at everything, and they'll look at Missoula obviously at some point.
They already are. Yeah. I mean, they're definitely moving into these markets. They're doing some more They've definitely stepped up their Adam Center plays.
And they bought our festivals. Live Nation bought all of our festivals, and Headwaters was one of them.
And they're buying every festival. Yeah. And they're buying every venue and every promoter. I mean, they are, if you follow it closely, you're seeing Live Nation buy something a week, whether it's a promoter, whether it's a festival, whether it's a club.
Yeah.
I mean, they're making a weekly announcement of how they're expanding, and we think that we are developing a very effective business strategy on how to compete with them effectively in these markets.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is at this point, it's a very strategic and calculated play. How do you stay viable in the age of the mass consolidation that's going on in this industry? So it's more important, not just from a buying standpoint to get to your original point and having that leverage, but it's as important of creating the ability to compete with these forces coming in from outside the market.
So competing looks like what? Where are you competing? On buying talent?
Buying talent, it's
for our audience. What does that mean?
Well, it means music for Missoula. I mean, one of the things Live Nation does very effectively is when they try to compete in a market, if they can't get into that market, because, for instance, I own the venues in this market, they just route around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the strategies that they take is let's just skip Montana or skip this market and play somewhere else until they
you have less competition for the talent.
And I can't even bring them here because Live Nation buys a whole tour,
right,
and says we're just skipping Missoula because log jams in Missoula that's how they compete, and they're tough.
Right, and they lock, and that's the important thing I think for our listeners to know. They lock up the talent. They buy the whole year. They buy a tour.
They buy a tour,
and they won't let them deviate from that tour.
And some agents, like WME, has an extremely strong lead in LA that loves independents like us, even though we're a dying breed, and he'll pull a date off Live Nation. But a lot of places won't.
Mm-hmm. They want to mess with.
They don't want to mess with
Big Brother.
And it's easy, right? I mean, selling 30 shows to Live Nation is a lot easier than selling 30 shows to 30 independents.
Right.
Now, the flip side of that is, I would argue that the experience that you get at a Live Nation show is nowhere near the level of experience you're getting at a Wilma show, for instance. You come into a Wilma show, you have the owner there. I mean, so I'm there. I'm worried about my serve times. I'm worried about how long it takes to get a drink. If I see a line, I'm worried about that line. I'm worried about how that artist feels about their day, the food they get. I'm worried about it all. Live Nation's got some 30-year-old, 25-year-old kid running that venue that doesn't care about any of that.
Right.
It's a job until he finds a new job or moves up in that organization. It's just it's the death of the independent promoter like us is also the deterioration, in my view, the deterioration of live music. It becomes much more franchise-like and much more routing-oriented than market-driven, customer-oriented.
Right, and I've heard the artists, and I believe them, like Lake Street Dive or Trombone Shorty, when they're up on the stage at the Wilma, they really appreciate the venue that they're in. And it's not a typical venue that they usually experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just, and yes, they love the venue. They love our investment in the sound system that we make, all of that. But it's all the little things, right? When Trombone Shorty comes, we get him out on the river. He gets scratch food, whatever he wants from the top hat. We make it, no matter what his request is. It's all those little things that make his day,
his experience, really special.
Great,
and wants to come back.
Let me throw a question at you, which is from a financial standpoint. Right now, you book and you're the promoter and the venue. And I know, just in terms of having known you for the last bunch of years, you don't want to do rentals, meaning like if a Live Nation or an AEG or somebody said, Nick, I want to book Nick Cave at the Wilma, would you do it as a rental?
Never.
Right. You only will do a full promotion. Do you ever see a day where you would do rentals?
Never.
And how come?
Because once you open that door, it's Pandora's box. And once Live Nation can start booking your room, then they'll get all the avails meaning the availability for the market, and they'll get them. I won't. And I'll slowly lose all those shows to Live Nation. So it's if you cross that line once, you've crossed that line. So I'll give you a perfect example. The Avid Brothers 2 years ago, we had that show. We had an offer in. It looked like we were going to get it at Kettle House. Along comes a promoter with history, a national promoter with history. They wanted to put it in our venue. We said we're not going to do that for all kinds of reasons. I can't control quality. I can't control the artist experience. All kinds of reasons. And they moved it out to Big Sky and did the show at Big Sky. And so, one of the things that has changed is with the I say this carefully, but with the decline somewhat of Knitting Factory in the market, you're seeing the rise of Live Nation, the rise of people like Chris Moore, the rise of AEG, and they're now that room, that space, if you will, at Big Sky is opened up to all those guys. So now I'm not just competing against Knitting Factory in that room.
Right.
I'm competing against all the national promoters in that room. And what we've got going for us is our room is significantly better experience.
Right.
The view lines are better. It's a purposed room. And that's what we sell on. They sell on the routing, big buys, and they can jam more people into that space than we can into Kellogg's.
Tell us tell us what not without getting into specifics. What are the things that power the financials of booking a show? Like, you have a ticket, you have a guarantee to an artist, right? And then to get them into the house, right? Talk to us a little bit about that. How you make your money.
So we make as a promoter, and I run my food and beverage totally separate from my promotion operation. So as a promoter, we make our money. We buy a show, let's say a Kettle House show, $100,000 for that artist. That's their guarantee. And then let's say my expenses to put on that show are $40,000, and that includes everything from food to production to hotels, whatever I'm paying to get that artist here. So we're in at $140,000. And let's say my gross on that show from the ticket sales, I sell all my ticket and my ticket fees and everything else, gross is $220,000. So I've got the difference between $140,000 and $220,000 is the proceeds available from that show. I get whatever that's called the back end. It's after the artist has been paid their guarantee, the artist has been paid all the expenses, or all the expenses have been paid. Then the artist and I split that back end, and that is all negotiated deal by deal.
So an artist could have like a 70% back end,
and I get 30. So in my scenario, that delta between the 220 and the 140, I'll get 30% of that. And so there's not a lot of money there. I mean, everyone thinks, oh my God, these guys are making so much money. It doesn't quite work on that. I mean, most of the money goes to the artist, and then covers my expenses, and then I get a split on the back end. Now I do get the bar, even though it's a separate business. A good Kettle House show does really well at the bar, depending on the artist.
Right, the alcohol.
So that the food and beverage is a complement to the promotion profit.
And occasionally there's corporate sponsors, or
there's corporate sponsors. We're fairly frugal with our corporate sponsors. We don't. That's another difference between us and a Live Nation. We're not a NASCAR operation, and so you don't see my stuff all plastered over everything. We tend to like our venue clean, not a lot of advertising. And that's just been a business decision we've made.
Sure.
What if an artist brings in a sponsor with them? Meaning like,
Miller High Life brings you Garth Brooks.
Yeah, and they do. Now, if they want to bring that to Kettle House, it's a problem because my deal with Kettle House, I can only do their beer, which is a great deal for me and Kettle House because they make good beer. But yeah, I mean, you
would accommodate it. Let's say it's a cell phone company, and you have to create an activation for them with the artist. You could do that.
But the artist gets that money. But yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Sure.
And you may get a fee for helping them activate it.
Not much, but we do.
Not much, but that's a good way to get the artist, keep the artist happy.
Yep.
So let me switch gears just a little bit. 2 months ago, there's an announcement that after a number of years and false starts, the what was originally referred to as the Fox Theater Project is now coming to fruition with groundbreaking in the summer of 2020 for the Drift, which is, as was described, a $100 million events center and a hotel and parking and some other things. So can you describe the whole project, and is it all under one umbrella? Is it separate pieces? What does it all look like, and what can Missoula look forward to seeing here in a few years?
Yeah, so I mean, the city had been working for years with a development group. It was really a partnership of multiple different entities, and they were going to do a conference center and a hotel and parking, and that's been on the books for a few years and just couldn't get going. So the city reached out to us and asked us if we would take a look at it, in particular at the conference center component. And so we took a hard look at it and came to the conclusion, one, the conference center on its own just doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. However, we like an event center, and we think that we could make those numbers work. And after a lot of back and forth, it was decided that instead of partnering into the existing partnership, that Logjam would just take assignment of the whole deal and be responsible for it on its own. So we stepped in and took assignment of all the documents. So it's not a new deal with the city. It's an existing deal that Logjam took assignment of. And that's an important thing for the viewers, the listeners to understand is this wasn't some big deal that got pushed through really quick.
Right.
It was really a deal that's been sitting around for years that we got assignment of. Mm-hmm. So we took control of this deal, and it consists of a 400-stall parking garage. And just to help the listeners also understand, it's on the corner of Orange and Front, right on the river. So it physically abuts the river path, the river walk. So it's a 400-stall garage, and that serves as a podium for a 70,000 square foot event center that'll be a 6,000 capacity general admission or 3,000 fully seated. And then also a hotel that's about 180,000 square feet, which will consist of a food concept that we're putting on the first level, a spa concept, a conference center of about 10,000 square feet, 140 rooms, and 35 condominiums. All of that adds up to about $88 million.
And part of the reason I would assume that you didn't want to do, or it didn't pencil out, to have a conference center is when you're in the conference business, you're competing against every town that's like this for bringing a conference to town, as opposed to being able to reach out and book talent to bring into an event. And you can do both, but it gives you more opportunity to keep the room, the space utilized.
Yeah, I think so. And I there's a lot of reasons that an event center works better than a conference center. Let's start with the city. The city likes the idea much better because just think of a conference center. Conference center, at best case scenario, you're bringing 1,000 people, best case, to town, and maybe you're doing that once a month. And sometimes it's 500, sometimes it's 1,000. So call it 750 a month. So you're bringing 750 people into town once a month.
Right, 9,000 a year.
Yeah, and you're spending $17 million on a conference center for 9,000 people a year. Doesn't make a ton of sense.
No.
The event center is going to do 4 or 5 events a month at minimum. And let's say they average 3,000 people. So, I mean, there you're looking at 12,000 to 20,000 people a month coming downtown Missoula. So from the standpoint of the city of Missoula, all of a sudden I went from 9,000 potential customers a year downtown, eating at restaurants, going to bars, staying at hotels, to potentially 15, call it 1,000 a month of doing the same thing, of which we're averaging right now about 42% of my ticket buyers are out of market. So if you say
define out of market
more than 250 miles away from Missoula.
Okay.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's really impressive.
Quite amazing, really, when we step back. And that's one of our reasons for interest in the hotel. Because we think there's a huge opportunity to cross-promote and have people that come to our shows stay at our hotel. Mm-hmm. But if you think about 40%, for every 10,000 people we bring, 4,000 of them are coming from out of market. If you just took Mumford & Son, that 14,000 people, 7,000 of those tickets came from out of market. So on one Sunday, we brought 7,000 people into downtown Missoula, and every bar and restaurant in town was packed. Every hotel was sold out. So that's the motivation from the city, is that we have this great economic driver impact on the downtown.
It's like having a Grizz game 6 times a month all year round.
Yeah.
And the economic impact.
Downtown.
Right downtown. So 2 questions that immediately brings to mind to me. 1, 400 parking spaces enough? And if not, where are we going to put all these people 5 times a month?
So I guess I'd throw that back to you. Where do you put the 20,000 Grizz fans every month?
Yeah,
every weekend? I mean, you figure it out. And the notion you can build a parking garage for 6,000 people that you're only doing 3, 4, 5 times a month makes no economic sense, and nothing would pencil. So again, going back to what the city wants, the city actually likes that, because what happens, instead of having all of those people park at the complex and only give their money to me, all of those people are parking at all of these garages around town, all of the streets around town,
right?
And they're going to all the restaurants and hotel around town, and then they're walking over to the venue.
Right.
You take Mumford & Son, it wasn't an issue. Parking was not a problem for Mumford & Son. And that was 14,000 people with 0 parking. So, our feeling is that the parking deck is not being built to accommodate the 6,000 people. It's being built to accommodate the hotel, the condos, the regular traffic, right, and VIPs for the events. The rest, we want them to park all over downtown. We want them to spend their money all over downtown and then come to the
Second question. Even with all the people coming in from other markets, 42%, do we have enough of a base to support another 6,000-seat venue in this town? I mean, it's a small town, really, when you think about it.
It's a great question. I mean, so step back and look at in 2019, we did 25 shows at the Kettle House. We sold 85,000 tickets in 3 months. We may have bumped up against saturation, but all the shows performed. We made money on the shows. We only had 1 loss last summer. So it was a good performance from that standpoint. So the market absorbed that, plus a Mumford & Son, plus 5 shows at Big Sky, plus a couple shows at the Adams Center. So the market absorbed a lot that summer. The question is does that last all year round? I think it does when you think about it in a regional context. And yeah, a key part of this, and one of the other benefits of the hotel piece, is this is a destination venue, and we will market it as such. So the big goal is not just Montanans, Great Falls, Butte, Helena, Bozeman, Billings, but Spokane, Seattle, Portland, Salt Lake. We digitally advertise in all those markets. And I think if you build a awesome facility connected to a boutique hotel that's super cool in an awesome place like Missoula, people will travel here to see shows.
Well, plus the other piece, which is in the summertime, you don't have the 9,000 students or plus 10,000 students that are here during the academic year. So you have another concert-going group that obviously you understand their interests and their appetites, and you can appeal to them during the academic year.
And the other piece that I think is interesting is that this venue, if designed correctly, allows us to go into areas that we haven't previously gone. So the market, I think, has a desire to see theatrical productions. I think the market has a desire to see big comedy acts. I mean, no offense to the Adams Center, but who wants to see a comedy act in the Adams Center? It's weird. It's
a basketball facility.
Yeah. Who wants to see a play in the Adams Center? This will be a purposed facility that has the production capabilities and the seating arrangement and a setup to bring those kinds of events in. So when we say the saturation point, well, we're about to add a whole new set of genres and types of entertainment that haven't been brought to the market before.
You could have Hamilton there, for example.
Trade shows and all these other...
Lots of opportunities.
Let's do a quick ID. Our guest is Nick Checota. He is the owner, CEO of Logjam. And we are talking about the newest property, The Drift, which breaks ground July of 2020.
Yeah, sometime summer. It's 2020.
Summer of 2020.
I've asked you this before, but I'm going to ask you this again. How do you stay on top of what acts are? Because you said that was pretty good. Of 25 acts, 24 performed. How do you stay on top of what the appetite of the market is?
It's tough. I mean, I do all the buying for the big rooms now. I've brought on a buyer to help me with the Top Hat and the Rialto. We kind of split up the Wilma and the New Elm, and then I buy the bigger rooms. So I'm really in the midst of it, and I as somebody that sees the financials on the back end and thinks about them after every show, I'm also buying the shows on the front end, which helps. You just have to stay on top of it. Some some things just do not perform in this market that do perform in big urban markets. A Rufus Del Sol is a perfect example. It sells 5,000 tickets in Seattle. It comes to Missoula and sells 400 tickets.
Right.
And we take a big whack on a show like that. So we have to be really smart and sensitive to what the differences are between Missoula and more urban markets.
Sure.
And there are definitely, jam music, and jam is a great category. Jam music does not perform in Missoula even as well as it performs in Bozeman. Definitely not as well as it performs in Colorado. We behave in many respects very much like Seattle, Portland, more than we do like a mountain town, if you will.
Right.
Like a Boulder, Bozeman, I put in that category. So there are some important distinctions between even Missoula and Bozeman from a buyer standpoint.
Yeah, the audience is different.
It's very different. It's and Billings is even more different. I mean,
which makes sense. Are you, the other nice thing to talk about here is the airport, right? Because between what's going on with the airport, the expansion there, that plays right into all of this in the sense of you're going to have a bunch more gates, right? What are they, tripling the number of gates they're going to have at the airport?
They're going to have 8 or 9 gates. But the other thing it does, which is I went to see Hamilton. I paid for what it would have cost me for 2 tickets in New York City. I flew to San Francisco, stayed at a really nice hotel, ate for 2 days, had 7th row seats, and it cost me less than 2 tickets. And that works in reverse. Somebody sitting in Vegas who's going to pay $2,500 to see a show on the Strip. And that's not an unusual price.
Right.
If you want to get tickets, you were just there. What it would cost you to see Lady Gaga?
No, it's prohibitive. And then you're talking about the room costs and then food costs. It's
easier to get on a plane flight for $59 and fly to Missoula, stay at your hotel, and see a show here because you don't price it the same way.
And we're already seeing that. I mean, at the Kettle House, I think if you build rooms that are special and of the highest caliber,
right,
and you combine it with what we're going to do at the Drift in particular, where you build this really cool, funky hotel on the river, that proposition becomes fairly attractive to people in the region. Because if I live in Seattle, my options are somewhat limited to see music. I mean, the Showbox, it's okay. The Moda Center, it's okay. So if I'm someone living in Portland and I want a really cool experience, and I want to see it in a world-class room and go to a cool town, this is a great proposition.
So what kind of acts will the Drift facility allow you to book that you're not able to book now?
Well, anything I do in the summer that I can't do year-round. We haven't done much in the Adams Center for all kinds of reasons. That's a whole show.
Yes.
But it lets us kind of continue what we do in the summer, plus a little bit bigger. I'm designing the venue in a way that production-wise, stage size-wise, loading docks, all of that, I can get big underplays. So this stage, if Fish wanted to play this stage, and to the listeners, I'm not doing Fish in this venue yet, but if Fish wanted to play this stage production-wise, they could. And that's the goal, because we do feel there is routing going on through Montana that isn't stopping because there is no viable place for them to play. Well,
you make an important point, which is you can do outdoor. A lot of these events where we have name acts are at the Kettle House, and the Kettle House you can't go to in November.
Yep.
I think it really, and we've talked about this privately, but this really opens you up to the country genre in a bigger way.
Absolutely.
Because right now there's a lot of artists that will play, like the Adams Center, and because they're routing in October, November, but now he's giving them an opportunity, another choice, which is great.
Like Sturgill Simpson, Tyler Childers, would have played this room and not the Adams Center, I believe.
What's going to be the name? Is it going to be the Drift? Is it going to be the venue itself? Is going to be called the Drift?
The whole complex is called the Drift. I mean, we're branding it as a full complex, and we'll have the venue at the Drift, the hotel at the Drift. We're going to do a really cool food concept that I don't want to talk about.
You know, Arnie, I love food.
I'm not going to tell you what the food concept is. It's really cool.
By the way, the food court concept is not.
You're killing me by saying that and not telling us. But
okay, what about the rooms? You said something about the rooms are going to be different. Give us a preview.
With the room.
You said the rooms
hotel
will be
rooms.
Very cool hotel rooms.
Yeah, so I'm doing what's called in the industry a non-branded concept, meaning we are not a Marriott, I'm not a Holiday Inn, I'm not a Hilton, I'm an independent brand. Most people, conventional wisdom is you can't do that.
Right.
And the reason the conventional wisdom is that you need the loyalty programs of these and the marketing engine of these big machines. We don't agree. We think, one, we have this 45,000 people a year coming in from out of market that are looking for lodging. We are in a better position to market at them than anybody because they're buying tickets before they buy their hotel room. We have a marketing engine because I have 8 people that all they do is market my shows.
Right.
And that engine is really effective, really good, and we're going to turn that on for our hotel. We're really sophisticated at digital marketing. We can go into other markets. We feel that we can be competitive there. So that's the operation. Going non-branded also frees you up to not looking like a chain hotel.
Right.
And they specify what kind of materials you can use. They specify the size of your lobby. All these different things they tell you. And by being an independent hotel, we have way more freedom to do something different, cool, a little bit funky that you just can't do when you're a branded concept.
Right. I stayed in a hotel in Hollywood when it first opened called the Redwood. And in the rooms they had old Victrolas and vinyl that you could play. They had sort of funky mid-century furniture. It was like a apartment. It was a really kind of cool apartment. And you could even have a concept here where it would tie into the music concept or the river concept or whatever that you couldn't do with a branded property.
Yeah, it just gives us the freedom to be a very local feeling product, which I don't care what you do to a branded product and all these little kind of faux boutique brands they're creating. When you cut through it all, it still feels like a branded hotel.
Right.
And you can tell when you walk into an independent hotel, you can tell the difference between a branded
There's no question about that. Now, what about the condos? What's the thought behind those?
Well, part of it is that, and this gets complicated, but that the TIF, the tax increment financing that's being used by the city to buy the event center and to fund the event center is in large part being generated from the event center, from the hotel, and from the condos. So this is another myth that's kind of floating around in Missoula is, I'm just getting all this money to build my venue. Well, it's not quite working like that. The right now, that is a piece of property owned by the city that has 0 taxes. And as long as the city owns and operates anything it builds on that site, it has 0 taxes. So what this structure does is it allows the city to build an event center. It leases it to me. And through that process of leasing it to me, it generates taxes because now I lease it, I pay taxes on it to the tune of $300,000 a year. So now you got that $300,000 a year. The hotel, which gets no TIF, is going to be taxed at about $450,000 a year. And then the condos generate additional tax increment financing. All that together, that payment, that annual tax payment of $1 million, call it $1.3 million, if you take the present value of that over 25 years, that's the bond proceeds, the TIF that pays for the event center. So it's a totally self-funding project that wouldn't even exist if the city didn't own, if the city maintained ownership.
Right.
And so what kind of condos? Because I want to get on the early list.
Okay, so the condos are going to range from 1 bedroom to 2 bedrooms. They're going to price differently based on the floor they're on. They're going to be on floors 8, 9, and 10, so the top 3 floors. They have truly awesome views of the Bitterroot Range, even around above, because they get above the hospital, so you can see north, you can see downriver, or upriver, you can see the Bitterroot Range. I mean, you have these panoramic views that are going to be stunning and really awesome. And the hotel will have, if you're an Airbnb-er when you're out of town, the hotel desk will handle that. You're going to have access to the spa. You're going to have access to the fitness, access to room service from our restaurant, all of that.
There's a lot of interesting amenities to go along with it.
It's a full-service condo.
And is there any thought for putting a pedestrian bridge across the river to the other side?
For sure there is. The city has plans, and we are actually, when we build our project, we're going to build the piers that structurally support this side of that project, because once we build it, they can't get to it. But we're going to build that so they could put a bridge right connecting the two trail systems together.
Which would be great.
Well, it also connects
so this whole project's going to help the infrastructure build out the infrastructure downtown.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm probably spending $4 million on pure infrastructure, sewer, water. And if you think about the location of this project, it's a really special location. I mean, I've got a hospital 45, 50 feet away that has 1,600 employees.
Sure.
I'm on the edge of downtown. I'm 3 blocks from all of the core of downtown.
Right.
I've got 2 major neighborhoods, one being around DraftWorks and that whole north end kind of going all around in there.
Right.
And then the other on the other side of the river on 3rd, 5th, and 6th. So I'm in the middle of all of these great neighborhoods.
And Sawmill?
And Sawmill, this whole Sawmill development. And so far, there isn't a single restaurant in all of that. There isn't a single hotel servicing. Well, you got a couple of hotels, but there isn't a really great hotel near the hospital.
I'm not going to put, our guest is Nick Checota, okay? And we're talking about the drift right now. I like always talking to Nick about since the last time we spoke to you, which has got to be 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Okay. A lot's changed in town, right? A lot's been built in town. And, tell me what you like. What are you seeing that you like going on downtown beyond just your properties? Like, what's happening downtown that you want to kind of say, hey, I like where we're going with this? Because I think people want to know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll start by giving a plug to the mayor. I think he is doing a phenomenal job of thinking about the future of Missoula. And what I mean by that is people, you hear a lot of pushback on use of tax increment financing. I think he's using it in a way that he's creating strategic investments in downtown that give us an infrastructure that position us to grow for the next 30, 40, 50 years in a way that makes sense. So that would be my first thing, what I like going on. I think the city's being very smart on how they're using their resources to help develop downtown. I think the master planning effort, I don't agree with everything in the master planning effort. I think the fact that we as a community go through that process, thinking through our river system, our trail system, thinking through the overall downtown layout, I think that's awesome. And you're never going to agree with everything, and I agree with 85, 90% of it, and I think they're doing a good job. You take the library, again, tax funded to some degree, bond funded. I think it's an awesome facility. I think it's creating a hub. I think it's a great community center. The notion
you and your wife have made a contribution for a music center there for kids.
Yeah, not a music center. It's actually an art room.
An art room. Okay.
Yeah. So we contributed $50,000 to help build that one little facility. But I just think it's an awesome community center, and the idea that libraries are dying is actually not true.
Sure.
If you look at traffic, it's quite the opposite. And there are income classes that need access to a computer. They need access to these facilities. And you got to provide that. That's just my opinion politically. It's where I come from politically.
Our sister city in New Zealand, I visited Palmerston North, and the center, the hub of their downtown is their library, which they put a coffee shop in. Yeah. They put in showers and lockers for people. I mean, they really made it very useful for certain classes in town that needed those extra amenities.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful facility. I think it's awesome. It's an architectural statement. Whether you like it or not, it's good architecture. It may not be your taste, but it's good architecture. The other thing that we've contributed to substantially that I also think is another cool little cornerstone is the ZAC. Mm-hmm. So
where's that located?
It's on Main in the old Studebaker building next to the Shack.
Okay.
And that is a 20,000 square foot community arts center, and it has a stage in there. It has art supplies closets. It has performance recording studio. It has performance spaces, rehearsal spaces. I mean, it's a really cool little art hub. And I think facilities like that and the library are essential as Missoula grows. The best way to keep your character, in my opinion, is to support the arts.
Agreed. And
those are 2 examples of really cool art-centric facilities that are in the heart of our downtown that can afford to be downtown. And I think if you start losing that downtown, you're going to lose the character of the community. So I like those pieces.
How about the university? What do you like? I mean, and I ask you that for, because I think it's important to hear what you think, because it's not only a source of employees for you in the educator, what is it, the entertainment marketing program.
Management program.
Right, management program brought a lot of employees to you, but also, hey, that's where a lot of our audience comes from, our ticket buyers. Me too. I mean, everybody that owns a business in town is relying on that university in some way, shape, or form.
So we need more enrollment.
Right.
I mean, we can talk about 100 different things.
It's enrollment.
We need more enrollment. Now, I'm not in Seth Bodner's world, and I'm sure he has got a laundry list a mile long of things he's got to deal with to help turn that facility around. As a business downtown, we need more enrollment. You talk to all the other restaurant and bar owners, and the loss of these 5,000 or 6,000 students has been significant. I guess that's
fair, though. That's a fair. I mean, I think you hear that from a lot of people. Enrollment, we need enrollment up, obviously.
So I feel like it's time. We got to start seeing that.
Well, you can see in comparison because you're now in Bozeman, and they've had. It used to be the opposite. They had a much lower enrollment than we did, and now they have a much larger enrollment.
And you go by that campus, and it is hopping. Like there are kids everywhere, and the difference between 10,000, 10,000 students and 16, 17, 18,000 students is
in a town these size is significant.
Massive.
Yeah.
And so, I hope the best for Seth Bodner, the president of the university. I am supporting him 100%.
Sure.
And I want to see him be successful, but it's time to get more enrollment, I think.
Yeah, I think we would all agree with that.
Yeah.
Our healthcare system, we have a great healthcare system here. I'm just keeping going around the
periphery.
Well, also the interesting thing is I think about Nick and I think about downtown, right?
Right.
But there are midtown, there's other areas of town that are thriving or starting to really build up.
Well, and the other
I'd love your opinion on.
Well, the other thing that's happening is groups like ATG, which are now owned by Cognizant. They've gone public and said they're going to bring 1,000 to 1,500 more employees,
and they clearly are. I mean, they're hiring at an unprecedented rate. They're doing awesome things for Missoula. They're the poster child, as far as I'm concerned, of a company that's having great success. But you got ClassPass, you got Submittable, you've got Luminat. I mean, you've got a bunch of cool companies right now in Missoula.
And those are prime customers for what you're doing.
Absolutely.
They're making good salaries.
That 50 to 100,000 young person salary is what we need.
And they all have families.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing but awesome from
growth
from those companies. The other thing about downtown, before we talk about Midtown and other areas, as you said, you're a foodie. The food scene is definitely getting better in Missoula.
Agreed.
I ate on Sunday night at Camino, awesome place.
Yep.
The Thai place is awesome.
Yep.
You're starting to see some ethnic food come into Missoula, which I think is great.
Huge.
Cool concepts, creative concepts. Those two I named, I love them. I mean, they're great restaurants.
And it's the concept of rising tides lift all boats.
Sure.
Right? As a restaurant owner, you want other restaurants to succeed so that people make a point of coming here to eat.
Well, they say we're going to go to Missoula. We're not sure which place we're going to go,
right.
But we have Second Set. We have 1889. We have the places you mentioned. There's all these new places, plus there's some of our old favorites, like the Pearl, that are still here. So you have enough going on that you don't have to think about going somewhere else.
We just need to make sure we can park them.
Yeah, that's right. So let's move outside of the city. Let's go to the hip strip, and then let's go down to Midtown. What do you see there that you're liking, or that we think we need some help?
I think all kinds of cool things I like. I mean, I live in the University District, so the hip strip I obviously pay a lot of attention to. But even as you go up Higgins, you got the new brewery. I don't even remember the name of it, but it's going up where the old Hoagieville was.
Yes.
So I think you're seeing some cool stuff come in. You've seen a couple buildings get rehabbed where Clyde Coffee went in.
Yep.
So all good stuff going on around there, I think. Even up Brooks, too. I mean, you have the mall changed ownership, which got bought by a large REIT, real estate investment trust.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting capital into it, which is a good thing. Lucky's and all that. I mean, Missoula's got so much going on right now.
It's
and
amazing.
So much good stuff going on right now.
I'd like to see some hotel rooms towards Southgate. A few more hotels down that way, down the Bitterroot. But you know what? That's my only thing. I think other than that,
lots going right. Some old timers, curmudgeons, saying we're losing our character, but we're we're well into the 21st century here, and the character in the 21st century is going to be different than the character in the 19th century.
And I would argue that the way that the city's growing, particularly downtown, we're not losing our character.
No, I agree with that.
I mean, look at. The Wilma's still the Wilma. The Top Hat's still the Top Hat. You have all these cool restaurant concepts coming in. They're all local. I mean, Camino is a local two guys.
Right.
The guys that did Second Set are out of Montana. They're just
Cook City, Montana. 70 people.
We're building culture. We're building the character. Yeah. Let's take a quick break, Arnie. Nick Checota is our guest. We are talking all things Missoula right now. Back after this. Alrighty, we are back with Nick Checota.
I want to loop back to music for 1 second. Is there a great white whale act that you've always wanted to bring in here that you haven't been able to, or it may happen in the future now that we have a new venue?
Yeah, Dead & Co.
Uh-huh.
For me, yeah. I'd love to get. I mean, I got Bob Weir in the Wilma, which was awesome. I've seen Dead & Co. 7 or 8 times since they've reconfigured, and I think Missoula, Montana would eat it up. I think it would be an awesome show. That's my personal bucket list.
Yeah, that's
I
a
don't
good
book
one.
shows based on my personal bucket list. Sometimes I do, but it's not good business practice.
Could you have Dead & Co. at one of your current venues, or would you need to go to another venue?
It'd have to be Grit Stadium.
It'd have to be Grit Stadium.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen would be another one I'd love to bring
Yeah,
Grit
he'd be
Stadium.
awesome.
Jersey.
Awesome.
Is there?
How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah.
How do they find you? If they have questions or they want to, they want to offer their
Call 'em.
services,
Like we do.
They call my marketing guy, Ryan. No.
No, how do they get a hold of Logjam?
No, they get a hold of Logjam. I mean, go to our website, logjampresents.com. They can email info@logjampresents.com. And believe it or not, I see all the info emails come through. I'm super engaged in the daily operation of the company.
And you even have a Facebook page that I saw for the Drift is already up.
We do have a Facebook page for the Drift. I mean, the Drift's going to have a whole marketing program associated with it.
I'm very excited about that, aren't you, Scott?
I'm super excited. I think, Arnie, I know you're angling to get a condo.
Well, I looked all over the West, as I faced the retirement kind of issues.
Right.
I'm looking. So where should I go? And I've gone to all the places. Bend. I mean, everyone. Every magazine that has a place, I've checked it out. Vegas, Bend, St. George, Savannah, Georgia. I've been everywhere. And Missoula has more to offer than every one of those places.
There's no doubt. I mean, I've lived in Boston, Seattle, Nashville, Milwaukee, Dallas, and Missoula is my favorite place by far I've ever lived in. Yeah. And so the condos are, and I will tell you, this Drift project, obviously I'm biased because I'm building it, but it is going to be the coolest thing Missoula's ever seen. I mean, it is going to be an awesome complex
Scott,
all around.
You and I have to be, we might have to be in on this.
I love ending it in complete agreement. We all love living here. We all look forward to the Drift. It's going to be amazing.
Nick, thanks for being here. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichman@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO.